Good evening, morning, afternoon, night, whenever you find it most convenient to listen to The Bonfire. I, as always, am Alan the Poe with a goal, and that goal for this week is justice for Joost Klein. I, as always, am joined by my lovely co-hosts, DJ.
Who the heck is that?
And Tim.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that one. No, it's good to be back, I guess. Let's talk about the fire. Yay.
Yeah. Joost Klein, it was the artist that was representing the Netherlands at this year's Eurovision, who got very unfairly disqualified, and everyone, including me, is very mad about that whole situation. So if you watch Eurovision, you understand. If not, yeah.
My girlfriend's Dutch friend was complaining about that.
Much like Xherdan Shaqiri, we do not watch Eurovision.
Yeah, because Switzerland won. Yeah, and our own Alex Calabrese wrote about how he said he was happy that the Swiss artist won, and all the power to them. But I mean, just this year's Eurovision was just really just icky. But we're not here to talk about Eurovision. We're here to talk about the fire. Yay? Question mark. It doesn't really seem like a yay.
That's also icky.
Yeah, it's also kind of icky at this point. All right. So one thing we're going to quickly note is that we're at this point of the season where there's going to be a lot of games happening, including midweek games. So the way we're doing this is that we're going to do this episode should come out the day before the match against Charlotte. And then we will do one more episode in the week that will recap the Charlotte game and preview the Columbus game on Saturday. So twice the Bonfire. I'm now being told day of the match, so not day before. So this episode should be coming out on Wednesday. You should be hearing this on a Wednesday, or
whenever you want. You can listen to us later if you really love hearing our voice that much.
That's true. That's perfectly fine. Nothing against that. And then the other one will come out on Saturday,
or on possibly Friday.
Possibly, depending how well our MVP of the podcast, Austin, is able to churn this out. So let's just get right into it. So, quick little news before recapping that one game that happened down south. Our favorite guy to talk about when it comes to please come be our head coach, Jesse Marsch, has been. I don't know if it's been confirmed or just like linked.
It's been confirmed. It's been confirmed. Yes,
it's been confirmed now. Okay, to be the head coach of the Canadians men's national team. He's been previously linked with the Fire head coach job, and now he's got the job of the Canadian men's national team. I mean, I know he mentioned recently that he wanted to stay in Europe. I guess he's coming back to North America now to coach internationally. It
is possible, though.
Yeah.
Well, it's possible that having a national team gig instead of one where it's a club team, that he will have the ability to live part-time in North America, but also spend a lot of time in Europe. And it's possible that his wife, could be staying in Europe. So that could be a factor there as much as anything. It just, you have to be someplace less when you're a national team head coach. And to the extent that there's a lot of Canadian players that are now playing in Europe, he will probably be over there anyways, seeing them. And so it's possible he could spend significant time, if not like live there permanently.
Yeah. So I guess that's one less name on the list of potential next head coaches for the Fire. If that were to come sooner or later, I don't know when. So, I mean, hey, all the power and luck to Jesse Marsch and him now being in charge of old Canada.
Except when they're facing the USMNT, in which case absolutely no power to him.
Amen, I say to that, except when they face us. So, next point in the news. Recently, Prost America, the soccer outlet that we had a guest, Caleb Ponsgratz from the New England Revolution, who writes for them. They put him an article known as the second open letter to Joe Mansueto. Basically, I very much recommend you give it a read. Talk about how how in the past 5 years, not much has seemed to change since Joe Mansueto has bought the remaining 51% of the club from Hauptmann. So, yeah, I definitely recommend giving it a read.
Yeah, it's a call for change. And Dan, by the way, for those that don't know him, because I think that Prost America's a little bit outside of what a lot of people look for when they look for, soccer coverage. But there's two correspondents from Prost America that are at most, if not every Fire game. Dan hasn't been at the most recent home game, but he will be back soon. He's been on vacation and he's been watching the games while on vacation. And it seems like in terms of like a lot of his reporting is typically like more like straight reporting than anything else. So when you get an open letter like that, I think it just shows a sense of deep the emotions run with people, not just that are watching the team, but are covering the team.
Yeah. And the fact that he kind of speaks what a lot of people are saying, that 5 years later, a lot of things still look very much the same. They say that the ship known as Chicago Fire FC continues to look far adrift. That's kind of how it feels. So, yeah, we'll figure it out, hopefully, or Joe will figure it out at least. But it is very much a really good read. I definitely recommend giving it a look.
It is very unfortunate that at this point there is actual discussion of whether Hauptmann was a better owner than Mansueto.
Yeah, and I don't think I would go that far. I mean, like, here's are you like adjusting for inflation? I think becomes the question, right? Because the issue with Hauptmann partly was it felt like a lot of his choices were always somewhat forced by the fact that he sort of didn't have the resources to really be owning or running the team. And, a lot of the team's problems happened under Nelson Rodriguez, who was a very much like a company man, and company being the league at that point. But I think that reading between the lines, like, it's not like Hauptmann ever really was like, oh man, Nelson, that's my hire. It was more he was sent to help fix and or shut down and or prepare for sale the Chicago Fire. And because, again, of like that lack of resources. And that's not the case with Joe Mansueto. Like, the team has been spending at one of the highest rates in the league and has a new $90 million training facility, as Dan noted in his piece, that's going to be opening up next year. But despite that, the results have actually gotten, statistically speaking, a little bit worse than they were prior to Joe Mansueto owning the club.
It's kind of the question of, at this point, Mansueto may have the resources, but he doesn't have the on-field knowledge at this point. And that's kind of concerning.
Well, and I think that like, and like we're getting into a little bit of version here, but I think that that's been the overarching issue. Like, he, by his own admission, when you look at interviews that he gave early on in his ownership, he didn't understand soccer. And so one of the things he did is he used an executive search firm to find someone that did, and that was Georg Heitz. And I think that's part of why Heitz has stuck around, because he did a lot to explain soccer to Mansueto. But without that, I think Mansueto doesn't really feel like he understands the game, and I think that he doesn't know who to turn to that would. So there's not an obvious next candidate. There's not an obvious way to replace Georg Heitz with someone that would do better. And that goes with like coaching decisions and everything else going down the line from there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I want to say maybe something will get figured out, but I too don't know as much as, when it comes to running a club or a team, sports in general. I'm just a music major who happens to enjoy the game. So,
well, if you were making those decisions, the team wouldn't have fewer playoff appearances in the past 4 years than they currently have had. So,
yeah. Speaking of someone who knows about the game, Tim, you recently put out an article, you being, as I like to say, the MLS sicko of the group, where you did maths about this team possibly making playoffs.
Yeah, so it's not. It was kind of spurred by in the post game press conference following the loss of St. Louis. I was kind of struck by something that Frank Lopas said. He said it was early in the season. A few minutes later, Zerdan Shaqiri, who was the player interview that we got, said it's still early in the season. So that was clearly a talking point in the post match between the coaches and the players. And it's really not that early. Like, more than a third of the games have been played. And I just was doing the math on basically what the Fire would take to make a postseason appearance. And as it stands, they need to be a better than average team. If they lose both these games that are coming up in this week, then they would need to be one of the best teams in the league based on like last year's results. Like, they would need to be the same pace as basically Orlando or FC Cincinnati last season. Like what they did over the course of the entire season, the Fire would need to do from here on out. And that's a tall order. If they win both the games, it becomes easier. They just need to be like a little bit better than an average MLS team. But that just shows like it really isn't that early, but it's getting late very early. The game on Saturday against Columbus will be the team's 8th playoff game. You get 17 in a regular season in MLS. So just under halfway point for the home games. And we all know how important home is. Like it's a league where the home field advantage is absolutely massive.
If the Fire won every home game from here on out, they would finish literally at the exact same point that the playoff teams did last year.
Yeah, if they won every home game and lost every other game. I mean, teams in general in MLS are twice as likely to win a home game as they are to win an away game. Like more or less, like the exact number changes and stuff like that. But if you want to like use like fractions, like big fractions, that's what it is. So the team already looking at being halfway through its home games of the season, like they need to get results. And like that has to start on Wednesday against Charlotte.
Yes, sir. I mean, it also confused me that they're saying it's still early because I felt like even a few weeks back that felt like we've already been past the third, even though it was like a quarter. And I guess when you're still like a quarter and then you could say it's still fairly early. But now that we're really past that point, it's like it's not really early. We're at a point where a lot of teams are already like established or fairly establishing themselves or some identity, whatever. Now it's
his point, and I think that it's not wrong. It's not wrong yet. Is that if the team were to win a few games, like a handful of games, they would be in a radically different place in the standings, and the discussion around the team would be different. The vibes would be different, right? And that's true for now. Like that is true right now. Like if they win these 2 games this week, and they win their next game, like that winning streak alone would propel the team back into a playoff position. And all of a sudden they would go from being one step removed from the worst team in the league to being middle of the pack. And people will be talking about how the team was digging itself out of a hole and actually making a case for being a better team than anyone thought. But they have to do that, right? And the number of games where like there's a certain point in the season where just winning 2 games doesn't really change anything. And that point is rapidly approaching for the Fire.
True. And even then, it's still difficult to establish morale, even if they start winning games. Because who was it? Matt Doyle, when writing the power rankings or whatever, always mentions the oscillating chart of the Fire being like, oh, they're good. Oh, they can possibly do something. No, we're back at square one. So they have to just do it to the very end and past that.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, again, like it starts
that something
and it needs
done.
to start soon if it's going to start.
True. It's got to start soon. All right. And we got to start soon, I guess, talking about the St. Louis game. So we have a rivalry because, as we've mentioned, you can't have a rivalry if only one team wins. So we finally, I guess, have a rivalry as the Fire did not manage to win this one in St. Louis, losing 3-1. We saw a return to 4-2-3-1, which was, I guess, going back to Old Faithful. We scored a goal. Yay, question mark. I mean, a lot of fans were like, yay, we finally scored, I guess, question mark. But it's the final result that also.
And that goal was a tying
matters, I
goal. The team was
guess,
already
so.
down, as we'll get into. The team went down early, and that goal came just 3 minutes before it would have been 7 hours of competitive soccer between the Fire's goals.
I'm sorry if it's difficult for me to really say anything about this game. It's been just a difficult watch, I guess.
Seeing the Fire go down early and in such kind of like a classic fashion, goal in the second minute against Fabian Herbers and Kellen Acosta had a miscue with the ball in the air, and they both sort of went for the same ball. It ended up kind of ping-ponging its way. And basically, at that point, there just was like no way for enough Fire defenders to get into position. And it became a 1-0 game against the Fire in the second minute. Like, there's just like, it just is deflating. Like, it just, like, there's just no other way of really saying it. Like, it's deflating. Rasmus Alm, I think that may have been his first, if not it's his second goal in the season. I mean, shot from distance. Arguably, Brady was a little bit too far off his line given the game state, and maybe like you could say he should be doing better there. But honestly, I don't know. It seems like that. Like that's like not really the thing to complain about. It's more the miscue in the defensive midfield that I think is more directly responsible for the goal. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mentioned before we started recording when I rewatched the highlights how this is sort of a complaint I've always had, I guess, in recent times, how the players, especially like now, love to just ping pong the ball with their heads back and forth rather than just putting it on the ground and just booting it at this point. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I feel like just heading the ball around, ping-ponging it around doesn't really help as much.
I think that's what they were trying to do, though. I think they were trying to get the ball onto the ground so that it could be played and corralled. It's just the issue was that both Acosta and Herbers went for it.
So I guess. And that was just unfortunate. I guess we just unfortunately played to the give St. Louis a goal on a silver platter as they sort of had last year, especially at the start of the season. Like when virtually every single team they played against gave them a goal of some sort. So
part of it was like random and bad, but part of it was also St. Louis's game plan being to make those.
Oh yeah, happen. No, they had a super duper ooper schmooper high press. So
yeah, and that press and the speed with which they were able to execute led to that goal, as it led to the goal against the Fire, as did convincing Brady to come off his line to try to play the goal. I think that was probably a decision to, try to get involved and potentially play back. I mean, may have been the thought. I don't know.
No idea what the thought process was there. But as we mentioned, the Fire have scored, and it's the guy that we have paid $12 million to score the goal. Hugo Kuipers finally getting his, if I'm correct, third goal of the season.
Third goal of the season, yes.
Yep.
And it's the kind of goal you pay him to get, where like the service.
No, exactly. It was right place at the right time, and man just stretched his legs.
Yeah, service wasn't great. Like, it wasn't exactly on target, but like he managed to get his foot on it, and the angle that he had was perfect, and it made it like roof of the goal. Like, he made it look very simple. It's not a simple shot, and it's something that, frankly, like any other Fire striker we've had over the past few years would not have made. Like, it would have ended up somewhere radically different if it even became a shot at all.
It's a Nikolic goal.
Yeah. Honestly, kind of, yeah.
Which makes sense, because Kuipers, at least in my opinion, seems a lot more like Nikolic than, and yet he's still the leading key passer on the team, apparently.
Interesting. But yeah, prior to the goal, there was a little bit of a doink on Guti as the ball fell into the back of the net. You could see Kuipers, he went to celebrate with Shaqiri and Mueller, but then he was like, wait, hold on. Guti's on the ground. Are you okay? So, I guess it was a ever so slight, like, I guess, bittersweet moment, because, like, yeah, we scored, but oh no, not another injury, hopefully. Is Guti okay?
He was able to go on, so...
This is fantastic news. I mean, I guess that at least. All right. Moving on to the second half.
That was this second half. But okay.
What?
The goal happened at the beginning of the second half.
It did happen at the beginning of the second half. You see, this is how the Fire has got me right now. And this is just, honestly, life has just got me feeling just completely down right now. Not even just the Fire, just life in general. I recently turned 23 on last Friday, and I just woke up and I was like, man, the world kind of sucks. So I apologize if I'm feeling extra negative. But you had a moment where St. Louis found themselves quite literally at the edge of the goal line in the penalty box. There are 6 Fire players, and yet somehow they were just able to connect. Brady leapt over the ball to make it 2-1.
And it's, I mean, just like, it's worth saying the goal scorer here, like it's like it's the one goal scorer that you really think that St. Louis has, and João Klaus, and leaving him unmarked in the box is just a crazy. Like, it's just an insane lack of decision, I think, more than actual decision.
I mean, hey, when you pay someone to score goals like Hugo Kuipers, some teams are going to be like, hey, that's their goal scorer, or that's the person that's supposed to score goals for them. Let's have them marked. I guess they just didn't realize that they should be marking him, and there we go. They're 2-1 down.
Yeah, everyone was a spectator on that goal for the Fire. I mean, just like the number of Fire players in the box, and for João Klaus, again, like they're one really like legitimate top end threat being left completely unmarked is just crazy.
It's completely irresponsible in my opinion. So, okay. I mean, the Fire had some chances, like running into the box, like in the 64th minute, Gutman had a run in that just went over. There was a few moments, especially from Gutman, where the Fire were able to run into either the edge of the box or create something at the edge of the box, but then it would just immediately, history keeps repeating itself and being either tapped out or just going wide. And it didn't take too long for St. Louis to score a third. This one was from a cross, another one where Klaus was just, I want to say tried to mark him. I'm pretty sure who is that? That's Pineda. I'm watching that, and he just wasn't able to keep up with him.
So Pineda and Suke were both like equidistant from him. So you had two Fire defenders that were equidistant. No one was really on him, and
like the moment the cross was flying, like Klaus knew what to do. He just ran, and Pineda and Suke didn't know where he went. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just was one of those matches. I think that the cross came in off of Celio Pompeo. It was a phenomenal job for him to get that exact angle on it. Like it wasn't an easy, quick, simple cross for him to get in at that angle. But yeah, I mean, again, like Klaus unmarked in the box.
Yeah. So what can you do? And then, yeah, after that, there were a few free kicks, both that would go mainly towards the keepers, both Brady and Berkey. There was a few little ping pong moments that happened. Afterwards, there was the sort of the one-on-one that went wide, but I genuinely thought it was going to be a fourth for St. Louis. There were several moments that this game could have ended like 5-1 for St. Louis if it wasn't like just unlucky that the shot went wide or something. So, yeah, it just goes to show something that we've been saying for the past few episodes, how when one thing gets fixed, the thing that was already doing okay gets broken all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Fire just cannot get anything going for them now, which is always fun.
No. Yeah, once again, I apologize to our faithful audience that our mood is very much not what it really should be. Even because I feel like even if the team doesn't do well, we should be able to find some positives and be able to I guess cheer ourselves up. there's just not a lot of that right now in the world, I guess. So I do apologize.
Exactly. It's just difficult when the team has had one goal in its past, 5 matches. They haven't held a lead since the match against Houston. Like it's just hard.
Yep. So that basically means the Fire are now winless in the past 5 games, if I remember correctly. 3 losses, 2 draws. And now comes a quick turnaround with this Wednesday, or today, if the episode gets released on time, where the Fire will be hosting Charlotte for the first time this season. The next game against Charlotte will be all the way in October, near the end of the season. Charlotte are off of a 3-0-2 record in the last 5. Overall, they are 5-5-2 on 17 points, 6th in the Eastern Conference, with their previous win being a 1-0 win over Nashville.
But they have yet to win a game they've yet to win a game on the road. They have a single point on the road, and it came back in March. So, alongside 4 losses. So it's a team
which I would use as a positive note, but that's the same thing we said about New England. They haven't won on the road prior to our game as well with them.
No, but again, it's an opportunity for the Fire, right? Like you have to seize the opportunities.
True.
They didn't do that against New England. This is a team that has been good at home. They've only got 1 loss at home, but on the road they've lost everything except for one match very early in the season. I mean, it really, and we talked about the math earlier. Like this is a must-win game for the Fire.
Yeah. As we've been saying, this is must-win for the past few games. But this is, Tim, as according to your math, the actual this is so the point of no return.
If the Fire win 1 match out of the 2 that they have this week, the math on how many points they have to get per game to make it to the playoffs is essentially unchanged. But part of the reason this is a must win is the other game is against Columbus, and Columbus, I mean, their record in MLS has not been phenomenal lately because they've also been competing in CONCACAF Champions Cup and some other stuff, but I think they're widely considered to be the best team in the league, especially if you exclude teams with guys named Messi in them. They play coherent, beautiful attacking soccer, and they embarrassed Rayados, like one of the best teams in the region. So if you're going to win one of the 2, at least, that game has to be the game against Charlotte, and that's the first one.
True. But why not just win both, honestly? Go for gold.
That's obviously the goal, but you certainly need to win one. And again, this is the one that you certainly have to win.
Yep.
They will be out of the playoff, spots in a week if they don't win both. Regardless, they probably will, even if they do. But again, you're at a point where you have to start asking how big of a hole do you want to be in before you want to start trying to dig yourself out.
Yeah. Do you want to be in as I'm pretty sure you said it. Do you want to be in a hole, or do you want to be in a hole at the edge of a cliff or at the bottom of a cliff? I apologize.
No, exactly. And I mean, Charlotte are playing like a different team since we last saw them in October. They have a new head coach in Dean Smith, which I assume that it's just because if there's a guy named Dean Smith and you've got a head coaching job in North Carolina, you hire him. You guys are probably both too young to know, but there's a North Carolina Tar Heels basketball coach named Dean Smith for one of those guys that lasted a decade and a half. So I assume it's Dean Smith can be our head coach. Sure. But this one is English, and he's had the team playing a lot better. It just seems more like he's playing a system, which the previous coach Latanzio was not really. He was rotating guys around. I mean, it was like Paunovic's rotating wheel of players and positions on steroids. And because of that, the team never really developed an identity. There's still problems with Charlotte's roster composition. They still aren't really getting high-end talent onto the roster, but he has everyone bought in. They're playing sort of a very kind of typical 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. attacks run mostly through the wings because like they don't really have like high end attacking talent, but like whatever, like it's working so far for them. It just hasn't really been working on the road.
Yeah. So last time we beat Charlotte was actually the first game we ever played against Charlotte. That was a 3-2 win at Charlotte. One that featured a Kacper Przybylko brace in where he ended up scoring the game winner in the 52nd minute. That was also a game where the Fire conceded in the very first minute, or like the very beginning of the game. But they ended up coming out from that. Since then, there's been 3 additional games. All 3 of them have been wins for Charlotte, unfortunately, including the last game at the end of the 23 season when they pretty much were like, playoffs? Nah, you guys don't need that.
The Fire were like, I mean, that was the game that happened immediately following the game against Miami.
Yeah, which
the Fire just needed 1 win out of 2 games, or even a couple of draws really would have probably put them in. Charlotte were very much on the outside looking in at the playoffs at that point. They had 3 games remaining when they faced the Fire. They beat the Fire. That gave them 1 win. They drew Miami, and then they beat Miami at home. And that put them into the playoffs, something that the Fire haven't been able to do. If the Fire had gotten a win against Charlotte, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs, and the Fire would have.
Yep. What a shame. Am I right? So, I guess this is the revenge tour, hopefully. It
is still MLS rivalry week. This is going to be in the preview that will be out by the time that this is released. It's still technically rivalry week. There's only so many really like legitimate rivals in MLS, so you get some weird matchups, and sometimes you're just like MLS is just throwing 2 teams together. I kind of think that this is them being like, all right, like you guys should be pissed that this team booted you guys out of the playoffs when you basically had a chance on a silver platter.
And we are mad because of that. But you know what? They no longer have 2 Polish players on the team, so I don't really care about them.
No, fewer Polish players. And Enzo Capetti, the DP striker that really didn't work out, seems like he may be going to Argentina soon.
Oh, wow. Argentina. All right. I mean, what else do we really have to say about Charlotte?
We traditionally do score predictions and then we say bye to everyone, but
Brand Bronico's on the team, so that's nice.
That's true. Brand Bronico's there.
The fan favorite.
And we like him.
The fan favorite in his time in Chicago. Not as much of a fan favorite. I mean, he's liked, I think, in Charlotte, but I don't think he's really like endeared himself the way that he did in Chicago. Even though he's from the region.
Yeah, but I mean, I still follow him on social media, and he does a lot for Charlotte and the area. So, I'm pretty sure people like him there. But yeah, like you mentioned, not as much as we loved him here during his time at the Fire. So,
and especially considering that was 2021 when we only brought in like 3 players.
All right, score predictions, gentlemen. I'll start us off in saying that this will be, and I want to be optimistic. Gosh darn it, I want to be optimistic. I want to go ahead and say that this game's going to be a 2-1 Fire win. Because I'm optimistic. I feel like we all need to be optimistic, including myself, especially in this time of the year, just to be optimistic. And I feel like both teams they're gonna pull out the stops. It's going to be a bit sloppy on there. I feel like it might get a bit fierce out there. Maybe some pushing and shoving, but at the end, the Fire should do the same thing they did against Houston and just pull something out of the top hat.
I'm saying Chris Brady clean sheet in goal. 1-0.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Fire just have to pull out a win in this one. And it seems like the kind of game that they can win. Like, they have to. So I'm saying a 2-1 Fire win.
All right. So, optimism all around. So, yeah, pretty sure that is all from us today. A bit of a shorter episode, but of course we're keeping it shorter so we don't completely lose our mind. And that way we can also get this episode out ASAP. And that way we can also get the, the recap of the Charlotte game plus the Columbus one out of the way as well. So, any words of wisdom for our Fire faithful so that they may come finish their commute or whatever they're doing as they're listening to this podcast on this lovely Wednesday day?
Hamburgers go well with cheeseburgers.
That's true. So do fries.
Which also go well with fries. Yeah. Hamburgers and cheeseburgers do go well with fries. Yeah.
But hot sauce goes with everything.
Thank you. True. I'm not really a fan of hot sauce. I'm not a spicy person. Maybe like ever so slight mild stuff, but like nah. I always have to have like a cup of water or milk even if it gets too much.
What Alan's saying is he's very white.
I'm from Poland, so yes, that makes sense.
All right.
Laughs and smiles all around. There we go. There's the smiles that we've been missing this episode, and I hopefully you guys are smiling too. I know it's rough, but through thick and thin, united we stand, divided we fall. We support the Fire when we're up and when we're down. LA. So, ladies and germs, and they thems of the Fire, I as always have been Alan the Pole with the Goal, joined by my lovely co-hosts DJ and Tim. Come on, you men in red.
Fire.